Hello, welcome to reality. My name is Felix Jones and I am making a documentary. So I have been set with the task of capturing and conveying a piece of reality for an audience. But the question is that even possible? What is real? Is real life a series of carefully selected images? Is it real people twisted by contractual obligation into smiling through psychological torture or being queued up to squabble over random trivialities? It is a popular concept fundamental to the education of journalists that there is no such thing as objective journalism. Over the past 150 years, writers, philosophers and historians have dedicated their lives to the elusive study of meaning in media and culture, such as Roland Barthes, Jean Baudrillard and more recently Slavoj Žižek. Historian Robert Sklar wrote in Documentary Artifice in the Service of Truth, "The visual document, far from being a mirror or artifact to be interpreted by the scholar, itself comprises an interpretation." More recently, Stewart spoke to experimental documentary filmmaker Ben Rivers, who claimed, "The thing about documentary is it's all a construction of some sort or another. Every filmmaker is deciding where they point the camera, what they decide to leave out, and it's all very manipulative. It's almost got as much construction as any fiction film. So if all media has some kind of point or story to tell, it would be dishonest of me not to tell you the point of this film. I believe that there is no media which is not in some way biased or calculated, and thus designed to manipulate an audience, and therefore not a reflection of reality." First of all, we have to define what I mean by the term real. So for the sake of this documentary, let's say what is real is at least an experience of the world that is without any kind of journalistic bias, agenda or performance. Weird and obscure as the nature of reality may be, we can at the very least be sure most of the time that people aren't performing to a camera, since there's no camera there. And we can be pretty sure that unless we live in the Matrix, we are not seeing a carefully curated set of images when we look out of our bedroom windows. But can I capture this reality on film? There are three well-documented barriers between any slice of reality and it being captured properly for posterity, and I shall go through them thusly. 1. The performer, or object of the film, the person being perceived. 2. The audience, or subject, the perceiver of the film. 3. The director, the storyteller, the journalist. So, let's begin with the performer. Say I want to capture a slice of reality around me. My first move would be finding someone or something to film. Done. But wait. By sticking a camera in the face of a person, am I not interrupting the flow of the reality I am trying to capture? We all know people are liable to act out as soon as they know a camera is present, and this phenomenon has even earned a scientific terminology: the observer effect. There are variations upon this idea, but the general gist of it is that the scientific value of any kind of study-based observation is likely to be corrupted by the very presence of a camera in the room. So no matter for how long I subject myself to observation, I will never forget that I am being observed. And thus we can never be sure from observing the film that I was ever being honest. Since the only film we have to look upon had to be captured with my knowledge of the camera's presence, there is literally nothing else to see. Even with the presence of hidden cameras, a subject would still need to agree to the release of the film after the fact, meaning that, unlike reality, the participant would have to approve of the version of themselves presented in the film. Also, we can't even be sure that the average person would ever even sign such a contract, so we don't even get to see at the sides of reality that include people who do not want to be filmed. Worse yet, in the observer expectancy effect, the observer, or in this case filmmaker or journalist, is known to subconsciously influence the participant, encouraging them to fulfill the desired expectations of the film.
Well, in a lot of ways, though, with the left, I mean, comedy is dead. The politically correct agenda, they hate comedy and they hate jokes.
There is at least a way around this. In popular psychology, the solution to this problem would be to use a double-blind experiment design, meaning that neither the participant nor the observer know the objective of the study. Thus it would seem the solution to my problem would be to ask a friend of mine to perform the interview for me in front of a hidden camera, so neither one of them has any idea what the intention of the film is, nor of the presence of the camera, and therefore there is no potential for performance. But, unfortunately, the compromising factors don't stop there. Number 2, the audience. What an audience member gets out of watching documentaries, reading the newspaper, or watching reality TV tells us a lot about how we perceive these mediums. Evolutionary psychologists theorize that the majority of the human brain's framework in the modern age is based around the social, our capacity for peer bonding and communication being our greatest evolutionary asset. Many evolutionary psychologists believe we even developed the capacity for speech for the purposes of gossiping, reporting on other members of our tribes. Human beings love a gossip, and this need is usually fulfilled by mixing with other members of our tribe or society, which requires for us to get up and leave the house. So reality TV could easily be seen as the fast food delivery equivalent of scratching this same itch. Giving plenty of reason for reality TV makers, as well as regular fiction filmmakers and tabloid journalists, to base their content around social dramas of manipulation and betrayal. Plenty for us to latch onto, thrilling the gossipy monkey brain. The greatest tragedy of this is that we can subconsciously bring to the world of film all the baggage we bring when we look around at our own realities. Since no piece of media can show the entirety of a person's life and thought patterns, there is an inevitable information gap.
Never had a camera in my head.
Will Storr writes that it is in information gaps that readers insert themselves into stories. Their preconceptions, their values, their memories, their connections, their emotions. Only by the reader insinuating themselves into the work can it create a resonance that has the power to shake them as only art can. So whenever we see a person on film or TV, we can only engage with them by filling in the gaps, making presumptions about them based on the tiny slice of their life that we get to see and whatever we think people are like. So participants observed in a documentary cannot help but become characters to an audience, parts of a story. However, Storr also wrote, "We are all fictional characters," meaning the very nature of subjective reality requires turning people that we see every day and ourselves into simplified narratives. So if everything is a story, does that mean the narrative of my documentary is not real? Or does it become a story just because we are looking at it? Well, before I answer this question, there is one last stage of documentary filmmaking that we have to discuss. The director, the editor, the storyteller. So, as we have established, it is impossible to put all of the information in the world on screen for an audience member to consume.
Yes, I suppose the news should just be a dispassionate list of all the events that have occurred the world over during the day. That'd be good. Except, of course, it would take forever.
Meaning our stories will always be limited to small sections of reality. So the question remains, which aspects of reality do we choose to put on screen, and why? These decisions always ultimately come down to the director, or the editor, or the commissioner of the piece of art in question. Setting aside the well-documented event of reality television being largely scripted and edited to show not only intended events, but even events that did not really occur,
they can change your voice, they can change the video, they can do whatever they want with it.
we must always ask the question of why one piece of footage is being shown over another. By being deemed worthy of presentation, it is implied that there is some kind of intended effect to have on the audience by showing them that piece of footage. It becomes literally impossible to deem any piece of footage worthy of presentation without it being in some support of some kind of story or argument or agenda, meaning that it will always be a carefully curated piece of reality and thus not reality itself. Even if I were to set myself the task of filming something that was entirely trivial and insignificant to show you, it would immediately become part of the story I am using to prove this point. It becomes significantly insignificant. For my money, where fiction filmmaking creates characters which, despite not being real, invite us to view them inside and out, interrogating their intentions from within, reality television can never be sure to penetrate the veneer of performance beyond how subjects would knowingly choose to be seen. We begin our stories seeing people from the outside and work inwards instead of the other way around, never knowing if we reach anything resembling the truth. What reality television and documentaries capture is something that is always affected by the presence of the camera and storyteller. Thus, it is something, like reality itself in the theories of George Berkeley and John Locke, that we can never be sure really exists apart from when we are looking at it.